Hello and welcome to another episode of your weekly program, Open Talk. On this episode of our program, joining me is Member of Parliament, His Excellency Mr. Ykhorjه, and we will discuss many issues related to Bahrain and its relationship with the region when it comes to political differences in this part of the world, sectarian differences, and what they could lead to. Your Excellency, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Open Talk. And I believe, as I started with, sectarianism and political differences in the region. What do these two words mean to you?
First of all, I would like to thank you for the interview once again. It's always a pleasure talking on Bahrain TV. The problem that is facing the whole region, in my opinion, it's more of a sectarian problem. If we look at what's happening today in Syria, if we look at what's happening in Iraq, the unfortunate killing of innocent people, Iraq has come to an astonishing number today, close to 1,000 people being killed a month. This is all, unfortunately, if you really go down to the root of it, it's basically more of a sectarian problem than anything else. Mm-hmm. So the whole region is being escalated through a sectarian situation, which is very dangerous, very, very bad for us, very bad for our future generation. I've asked a question and I haven't had an answer, which is who's the beneficiary of sectarian problems around the Middle East? This is the main question we should ask. People, unfortunately, get carried away with certain topics, but at the end of the day, these topics, unfortunately, all of them lead to, bottom line, it's a sectarian problem. Sectarianism has been around for centuries. If we go to the Crusaders, that was a sectarian situation, that one sect wanted to abolish another sect, and so on. So it's unfortunate. It has been there for a very long time, and people tend to go into sectarianism without actually knowing it's a sectarian problem, and then it turns out to be a sectarian problem. The war in Bosnia, that was a sectarian problem. So Lebanon, that was a sectarian problem. Today we're facing the war in Syria, that's a sectarian problem. So it's a very, very dangerous topic that we really have to face it head on. Everybody has to be aware that it's the sectarian problems that we're having. We don't want Bahrain to reach where the rest of the places have reached. And this is the main thing. If people are aware, religious leaders, community leaders, down to the single individual Bahraini, he has to be aware, he has to be responsible for the sectarian problems not to come up to a level that there is no going back.
Where are we in that level? On a scale from 1 to 10 when it comes to sectarianism, where is Bahrain on that level?
I don't want to put it on a scale, but what I would really want to say is before the unfortunate events in 2011, there was some sort of sectarianism, but it wasn't up on the surface. It was very hush-hush. Not a lot of people were paying a lot of attention to it. So there was a little bit, very, very minute. Today, unfortunately, Bahrain has come to a position where it is on the table, it is in front of you, it is in the coffee shop, it is in a restaurant, it's out in the mall. Everywhere where a normal Bahraini goes, sectarianism is there.
But what does that say about the society?
What does that say about a society that is...
that has had this, even in a smaller form, and when the crisis took place, it came out on surface. What does it say about the society?
I think the society got overexcited. This is very important. When you ever look at a situation, it's not nice to look at it with excitement. You really have to calm down, think of the actual situation, what's happening, and then be honest and say, this is the problem. Today what's happening in Bahrain, I believe the whole situation that's happening is more or less a sectarian problem that is brewing. If it wasn't for the sectarian problem, we would have been in a lot better place today. Mm-hmm. That's why I still say the religious leaders, the political leaders, community leaders, all of them have to pay attention to the subject, and they have to address the subject. Address it in a positive way that we don't want to go anywhere higher than where we are. Mm-hmm. Today, this position that we're in, I believe we can come back from it. But if it goes to a different level, I don't believe we can come back.
So, Your Excellency, religious and political leaders who initially triggered what we are talking about today, what is their role today? Can they take us back to 2011 and fix things? Do you believe they are really actually responsible for that? Because I personally believe that in a society where we have witnessed changes and modernization for the past 4 decades, we're not uneducated people. We're educated people, and we shouldn't be led by political or religious leaders. Who is responsible really? Are people themselves responsible towards these sectarian issues that we do see today, or do we blame it on religious leaders and political leaders?
I'm not blaming it on anyone. It's not the blame. Mm-hmm. It is the political leaders, the religious leaders, the community leaders. They have a positive role to play in it. You've heard about the mob theory. When a mob is going, people tend to join the mob than stay away from the mob, because you join the majority. And this is where it has reached today. It's joining the majority. So that's why the role of a political leader or a religious leader or a community leader, his role is to actually stand not with the mob, but stand on the side and try to give them positive feedback on what is happening and what is the right way to go. Mm. But if we don't take our role, we don't play a role. Even a father has a role to play in this situation in Bahrain. Even a mother, she has a role to play. Mm. So it is every single individual's role is to actually look at the situation and say, we want to get out of what's happening in Bahrain and go back to where we were, so we can be able to achieve growth, achieve higher numbers, achieve higher standards that we had till 2011. Mm-hmm. The numbers that were there in Bahrain, the biggest number was the unemployment was about 3.7%. If you talk about that number anywhere around the world, that is as good as there is zero unemployment. Mm-hmm. Because you can't have really zero unemployment. But once you have between 3 and 5%, you're on a very good level. Mm. We were at 3.7. That was a fantastic level of unemployment. That was a healthy situation to have Bahrain in. But unfortunately, what we went through, it was a learning curve. Everybody should say it was a learning curve. And now we have to be able to overcome the situation.
But isn't it a pity when people decide to follow what they believe is the majority, and it might not really be the majority, because people are dragged into issues like that? Let's say that there is a group that believes in something, and this group sends a message out, a sectarian message out. Maybe those people who follow this group actually aren't sectarian themselves, but the image that is given out is that they have all become, the country has been separated. Isn't it a pity to see educated people become sectarian? Now, I do see among people from my surroundings working in the media, I feel it is less, on a lower level. Is it different areas? Is it different minds? Is it different intellectual standards? Why do we see it among certain people only? What does that say? What do we need to do about it in schools, Your Excellency? What needs to be done in schools?
I don't think it's only in individuals. It's throughout, even the intellectuals or even the people with higher education. There is some sort, because they have to be, in their sense, they have to be with a group, because people tend to feel that if they're not, there is a sense of belonging. I either belong to left or I belong to right. It is the hard stand that you should take in the middle and say, I want to refuse. There is the majority of Bahrain is the silent majority. It is not the majority are extreme right or extreme left. The silent majority that is available in Bahrain, it's their job today to become more vocal about the subject. This is where I am coming for the religious leaders, the political leaders, the community leaders. The silent majority, they're silent. It's the very minority, the small minority that we're talking about, from the extreme right or extreme left, who are talking, who are instigating, who are always pushing. And if the silent majority stays silent, the drift will become more. But if the majority start being vocal about the subject, the only way is the minorities will be overrun by the majority. So this is where always, when I'm talking to people, I'm always telling them, you have to be vocal. You have to talk. You have to talk in regards to Bahrain, the country that you belong to. If we really look at before 2011, none of this was in the air. So that's why sectarianism, I believe, it's a cancer that's eating slowly in Bahrain. Even if you go outside, even on the GCC level, even the Middle East, or the whole region, if you really look at country by country and the situation, what happened in the country, there is a very fine string that is leading into sectarianism.
But the silent majority, do you agree that the silent majority, do you agree with this statement that the silent majority don't have tools through which they can speak out their opinions?
No, I don't agree with that. The tools are available. The strongest tool today is social media. The strongest tool today is social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All of these are your outreach to the people. I've seen people from the extreme right and extreme left have 50, 60,000 followers. Out of that, maybe let's say about 50% is not active, but there is another 50% that's active. So when you're talking about close to 60 or 70,000 followers, 50% is bringing you down to 35 to 40,000 followers that are active. So this is where, for you, the silent majority, you have a place to actually express yourself. And if somebody takes the initiative, other people will follow. And this is where I'm still calling on the community leaders, on the religious leaders, on the political leaders. These people have to start being vocal about the subject, trying to bring Bahrain to a better place, trying to take Bahrain till before 2011. Once we get there, then we can go forward. Was there mistakes in Bahrain during the unfortunate situations? Yes, there were. But everybody learned.
But are you telling me that social media, Instagram and Twitter, is stronger than someone standing in a mosque and preaching and gaining votes out of preaching because he's using the place where religion should be practiced? Are you telling me that 30,000 followers on Instagram, out of which 5,000 could just be from my area, would enable me to walk into parliament when someone else can preach in a mosque and get votes out of preaching and
Politicizing
using
religion is not the right way. You cannot politicize religion. Politics is politics and religion is religion.
But isn't that happening here?
It used to happen. Not as much right now. It definitely used to happen, but not as much. But still, this comes down to the individual. This comes down to our grassroots of Bahrain. Every Bahraini has to think about that. Politicizing religion is not correct, because you cannot mix politics and religion. There is a big gap between them. You can bring them close, but you cannot have them in one basket.
But some people have had them in one basket.
This is the unfortunate part, and this is where people have been educated. Bahrainis are very well educated people. Bahrainis are very smart. Bahrainis, you go to see the numbers of illiteracy in Bahrain. It's close to nothing. It's close to zero. See the number of Bahrainis who can speak English. It's a very high number comparing to the rest of the countries around us. So Bahrainis are more educated, Bahrainis are more aware, and now they just have to think a little bit and say, this is what we want. This is what we want that's best for Bahrain. This is why what I'm trying to say is I want to reach to the Bahrainis and say, this is exactly what we want. And everybody has a role. A lot of people sometimes, when you first talk to them, they tend to stay away from the subject and say, it's not my job. No, it's every single individual's job. It starts from your home, and then it goes out. From your home to your community, to a place to all of Bahrain. So it is a step-by-step process. But if we say, no, we don't want to, the silent majority stays in its place and say, oh, it's not my job, or I shouldn't do it. Somebody has to take the risk. And once you take the risk, you will have people criticizing you. That is a fact. But then you have to be really believing in your cause. And the cause over here today should be Bahrain.
You brought up a very interesting word, education. And Your Excellency, just a couple of weeks ago, the Ministry of Education hosted an official from UNESCO to train teachers. And among the topics that the trainer was focusing on was the topic of human rights. And I was just left to wonder if we are bringing international experts to teach teachers how to convey the message of human rights to our children in the same country where children's rights were violated 2 years ago, when the teachers themselves refused to teach. So you went to an area that's quite sensitive, education. If the basis, the foundation of our education system is built on people who deprived children of their basic rights of going to school and learning a word, those people mixed politics with education. And this is something that you shouldn't even go close to. You don't mix that. You don't allow children to pay for adults' political or sectarian differences. Education system in Bahrain, do you have an opinion about it, that something should be done even on the level of the teachers themselves? Because the teachers educate our children who spend 8 hours in the school every day. What is the impact of that? We speak about religious leaders and political leaders, but don't teachers have a very important role to play too?
Teachers have a role with the family. I cannot depend on a school to educate my child. The solid foundation of a child comes from the house. School is where the teacher tries to bring out what has been learned at home and build on it. If we're talking about human rights, why are we talking about human rights today where we've had a book of human rights that was given to us, which is the Holy Quran? 1,400 years ago that has the rights of children, has the rights of women, has every possible human rights in it.
Mhm.
So why are we talking about something that you're telling me it's new? It's not new in Islam.
Mhm.
It's absolutely not new. So let's not talk about the human rights. If we want to talk about the human rights, all I need to do is read the Holy Quran. And the human rights is in there. As for the teachers, they might be teachers that made a mistake. They might be teachers that did not understand the current situation and went with the mob, like, let's say. There were teachers that were politicized. We cannot say all of them were. Again, it was a mob situation, I believe in. You know, everybody was trying to gather with the mob to be a part of something, not the odd one out. And this is, we really have to say, today, we want Bahrain to go forward, or we want Bahrain to be on pause.
Mhm.
If we want to go forward, let's learn from what happened and go forward.
Mhm.
But if we want to say Bahrain where it was, we will keep on staying where we are and discuss what happened in 2011. We cannot stand still and discuss the past. We have to actually press play and go forward. And this is the easiest way for us to come out of it.
Mhm.
Is it hard? I don't believe it's hard. It's just a matter of the person saying, okay, it's time for me to make a change and let's go forward. Yes, like I said, there is a lot of people that made mistakes. But let's learn from the mistakes and go forward.
Something that I've seen you very concerned about, Your Excellency, is the situation of economy in Bahrain. Will all that have a more negative impact on our economic growth if we do not stop it?
Definitely. This is definitely, it will have a very big economic setback for us. We were on the right track before 2011. Growth in Bahrain was on a constant going up, on a constant growth, you know, the economical growth. What people don't comprehend is if the economy starts going backwards, the main person who's going to be hurt is the average Bahraini.
Yeah.
Over 60% of Bahrainis work in the private sector. The private sector owner, if his business is not doing good, first thing he's going to do is going to start downsizing. And once you start downsizing, it will affect the average Bahraini. The father that was bringing money home, if he got downsized, there is no place for him to bring money.
Of course.
So this is the basic problem of Bahrain when you're talking about the economy. The current situation and what happened in 2011 has a very negative impact on Bahrain economy. People have to be very aware of this, that if we don't get out of it, it will hurt the average Bahraini because of this situation. Something I think the number is 37, 39% that work in the public sector, but the rest work in the private sector.
Majority, of course.
That is the majority of Bahrainis.
Yeah. Well, Your Excellency, thank you very much. I know that you have a lot of passion towards the issue of economy. I've seen how active you are and how concerned you are. I hope that the next time we meet, we can discuss growth in our economy and we can discuss a different phase, probably a phase of society reconciliation. And that's what everyone wants today. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. I'd like to remind our viewers that on this episode of Open Talk, we shed light on a very crucial topic, the topic of sectarianism. And sectarianism isn't an issue that has occurred in Bahrain. I personally believe that, as Member of Parliament, Mr. Al-Khuwaiji said, that it came out on surface during the crisis. It was there among some people, not a majority, because the silent majority have a voice, and the silent majority aren't sectarian. They have lived in peace together. There have been mixed marriages throughout the history of Bahrain. How could there be a lot of sectarianism when we see the figures of people who have been involved in the least is mixed marriages? Let's keep aside what friendship is all about and what has brought us all together for the past 4 decades since the modernization of Bahrain started. We shed also light on a very important topic. How, if we continue in this direction, it will have the impact it will have on our economic growth. Prior to 2011, we were doing great. This went on pause. It did not stop. Our reform process did not stop. It continues, and I hope that the upcoming elections also will bring in more competent faces into our parliament. And I forgot to ask this question. Maybe I'll ask you now finally. How do you expect the next parliament will be shaped? Now that I brought it in my conclusion, I have to ask you this question. What do you expect? More businessmen? More independent?
Bahrain's democratic process is going through stages. It will take time for the parliament to be shaped, the full shape that will take the long run.
Yeah.
People have to go in Bahrain, have to try different candidates. And they have to see what works for Bahrain. We cannot actually, we cannot copy anywhere's parliament. We cannot copy, let's say, the British Parliament or the French, for the very basic reason those democracies have taken their time. You know, they went through their ups and through their downs, till they were able to fine-tune it to where they are today, and they're still learning on a daily basis. So for you to ask where is it going, it is all in the hands of the voters. The voters might need more independence. The voters might say, no, we need more societies.
Yeah.
But the thing is, not what works for outside will work for Bahrain. This is a very important point. What works for Bahrain is made for Bahrain.
Yeah. Well, with upcoming elections, I hope that our voters will go for the most competent people that will represent them for 4 years. 4 years, a competent member of parliament can bring a huge difference to your life. And as I said when I was concluding, this was a very an episode that shed light on a very crucial subject. Sectarianism doesn't take any country in the right direction. It, on the contrary, takes us backwards. We need to overcome the issues that started. We need to start new pages, and I believe many on the individual level and on the level of NGOs opened new pages, and if this reflects anything, it reflects the will of the people of Bahrain to move on and to go back to living in peace and harmony together. On this episode of our program of Open Talk, my guest was Member of Parliament, His Excellency Mr. Isa El-Kuhaji. Thank you very much for joining us. and welcome to another episode of your weekly program, Open Talk. Let me start this episode by saying something. Whether representing my area or not, I'm one of the people who's more than happy when someone from a specialized field, competent, walks into the parliament, because when that person walks into a parliament, I believe there are issues that are directly related to me, whether I'm in that candidate's area or not. These issues are going to be brought up and are going to be discussed in a place where the legislative authority is being practiced. When he won the elections, I was one of the people who was happy personally, because I would like to see more competent, educated people who have given the society something, whether through their specializations, whether through their charity or voluntary work, people who actually believe that they should give back to society. This is a brief introduction that will take us to my guest on this episode of Open Talk. On this episode of our program, my guest is Member of Parliament, His Excellency Dr. Jamal Mohammed Saleh. Dr. Jamal, I know we are 3 years late to say congratulations to you on our program, but I was actually very happy the day you won, because I personally believe that some people can bring a difference.
Thank you very much, Ahdiya. And because of my background in the medical field and being in it for so many years, I'm almost celebrating my 30th year now since I joined medical practice. I took upon myself to join a committee that is dealing with the services. So I am a member of the Committee on Services, which deals with matters related to healthcare, education, training, and lots of things. 9 of them, in fact. Women's rights. It's about 9 different areas that the committee is discussing, tackling, legislating.
Very interesting.
And I thought that I'll use also my expertise in tackling also health-related issues. And I thought that one of the issues that concern a lot of public is the disease called the sickle cell disease, which we know that a good percentage of the population have it. We know that about almost 5% of the population would carry the genes of the disease, carriers of sickle cell anemia, and also have the disease as diseased. Sickle cell disease is a disease that is inherited, so it's a congenital inherited disease. It comes to the person by his mother and his father carrying the disease, and so himself and his brothers and sisters would have it. And it has a lot of medical consequences. It affects the immunity of the person. It affects his musculoskeletal system. It affects many parts. And it came to light the agony of patients with sickle cell disease when they were at some stage labeled as drug addicts, which is very sorry to hear that. Sickle cell patients suffer from attacks of the disease. We call them the crises, sickle cell crises. And they go to hospitals and clinics when they get this episode of disease. And it happens many times that the doctors, when they see them in an agony and a lot of pain, that they administer to them the morphine and the narcotics just to settle them. And for some reason, it just came as a stigma that someone who has a sickle cell disease ought to be a drug addict, which is completely wrong. It's not wrong. It's not right at all. What did we do as a Legislative Council to deal with this matter? We started from prevention. We believe that in order to reduce the numbers of people having the disease, we need to control the marriages between people who have it. Now, this is very controversial, very controversial. Do we have the right to stop someone who has sickle cell disease from marrying someone that he loves or she loves? Is it our right as legislators to do that? Well, you can say that maybe we have a right in it. But then when we submitted to the House a draft of legislation to control the marriages of sickle cell patients, we got the religious leaders' opinion that we should not go as far as this point. So at the end we decided just to control and slow down the process of marriage itself. So now people are submitted to the medical test before marriage, and this is something that has been happening for the past, from 2006, so it's about 7 years now. And we put a piece of legislation saying that, okay, if you are found to have sickle cell disease, you're positive, and your future wife is positive, let's say, then you cannot proceed with the marriage as such. You need to go through a process of counseling and get the counseling, medical counseling, and social counseling.
As a couple counseling.
Yes, extra counseling. And extra counseling, so that they think a lot and think twice or 3 times or 100 times before they take this important step. So what we are doing basically is trying to slow down the process of finalizing the agreement, the wedding agreement.
This is interesting. I will interrupt with
Sure.
something,
Sure.
Dr. Jamal, because I want to go into details about what you're doing. But when you say 5% of the population, you mean 5% of Bahrainis.
Bahrainis.
So that is around 600,000, 700,000 Bahrainis, out of which 5% is around 30,000 people.
I think it's less than that. Less than that. We don't have yet carriers. We don't have. Yeah, that's possible with carriers.
If it's 5%. Yes.
What we know is that there is about 5,000 of sickle cell patients.
Okay.
But maybe 6 times more than that of carriers. So that is very possible. 30,000 of carriers and diseased, and about 5,000 labeled sickle cell patients.
Okay. Yes. You're slowing down the process. I interrupted because I needed to reach a figure. But you slow down the process, and we reached where you said, Your Excellency, that the couple go through counseling. And through counseling, they either decide to go for the marriage or decide to stop the marriage.
And not only that,
then
they have to sign
what?
Consent. That they have read and known all the consequences related to the disease and their decision to go further with the marriage, and they are very aware of it and the complications and all the effects that they take, and they sign a consent.
This is very controversial, because what I'm hearing here, Dr. Jamal, is that religious leaders are saying, let's have a generation of sick people, just because of something as superficial as labeled as love, that these two just want each other, and children are going to pay for it. And the same religious leaders speak about human rights, and human rights is being directly violated when 2 people, just because of something as superficial as love, and I call it superficial as love because no matter how important love is, what's going to happen to your children is more important. So religious leaders prefer to see children, young men, go on morphine, go on drugs to kill their pain and to have a difficult and uneasy life. They opt for that more than they opt for guiding people not to go for marriages.
I don't think that they want to see people go
I'm
through
being
the
a bit
agony.
hard on them.
Provocative. You are trying to be very provocative, which is fine. I don't think that the religious leaders want to see sick patients multiplying in our society. They have just to uphold the right for people have the freedom to choose whoever they are going to marry, which is a universal human right. In all societies, the freedom of deciding whom to marry is one of the basic freedoms of human beings. So do we have the right to stop people from exercising their right?
It's difficult to do that.
Exactly. So it has been controversial, and we met with religious leaders, we met with judges, we met with university professors, and we discussed the matter with them, and we told them, we know that through the measures that the Ministry of Health had taken and has taken in the past, there has been a reduction in the numbers of sickle cell births.
How has that happened?
Through public education, awareness campaigns. It's a process of educating people about the disease, bringing it to light, and bringing the agony of the patients also to light, so that the public will see how those people are suffering. And when they see that there is a lot of suffering in this group of people, then they just take it to their hearts, maybe that I should not take that step and do what those people without knowing have done. So through campaigns of public awareness, education in the schools even, there are programs being exercised at different schools to tell the students at their different levels of education that, well, this is a stoppable disease. We can stop it, we can prevent it. If you don't marry someone who is sickle cell disease, then you have a good chance of maybe avoiding to have your children having the disease. So I think with the steps that the Ministry of Health has taken over the past years, plus the law of the premarital medical testing that has been implemented about 7 years ago, they managed to reduce the numbers to now, as far as I know, to 1%, or maybe to 0.9%.
Because I do recall, Dr. Jamal, that just a few years ago I had an episode on sickle cell anemia, and it was during the time where there were 4 deaths in a whole year, if I'm not wrong, if not more, in 1 year, in 12 months. In a period of 12 months, 4
Only
deaths.
4.
Well, maybe it was more, because it was around 4 or 5 years ago.
We passed through the statistics, and we know that last year we had 45 fatalities. This year we are up to 28, 29 so far, and we are in December, closing to the end of the year. So it's less than last year, and I know that last year was less than the year before. So I think the numbers of mortalities, fatalities are reducing, and reducing not because there are less patients who are having sickle cell disease, but because also the medical care that we at the Legislative Council are supervising and pushing the government to take extra measures into looking to the affairs of this sector of the population. So what we are doing basically, other than the legislation that we are discussing nowadays at the Parliament about slowing down the process of marriage itself, and getting the people to be counseled and getting them to sign a consent of knowledge and awareness that they are undergoing this process with full awareness and knowledge. Other than that, I think we have a public debate with the government. I think it has been scheduled for next month, and we're going to discuss what the government is doing, its steps, its plans to combat sickle cell disease, and how efficient the medical services are in dealing with this concerning disease. So I think we are exercising our legislative role, also our supervisory role over the executive, and we're trying to make easy and easier the concerns of many patients and relatives of the patients with sickle cell disease.
Religious leaders don't have a problem with this legislation.
I think we are trying the legislation to skip the step where if you are going to get married and get the medical certificate of clearance, let's say, and you go to what probably the clergyman who would do the the wedding at home, the houses, the one we call it, our sheikh at home, and skip this and ask them to go to the court straight away instead. I think they have concern about the numbers of cases going straight to court to get that's the Islamic court, one of it, to get the judge to consent and agree to their marriage. This is the point we were trying to introduce, and we hope that they agree to it. It's a matter of a capacity, whether the judicial have the capacity to deal with an increasing number of marriages, skipping the initial step and going to the judges straight away to get their wedding authenticated or approved or signed. So I think it was a concern about this issue, and the concern about stopping the marriage is gone. We just told them, okay, well, let's take it step by step. Now we are 1% of prevalence of the disease amongst the newly born. So let's push this piece of legislation and wait for a few years and see if the percentage drops further, and maybe at some stage in the future we can tighten more and reach a zero level of births with sickle cell disease.
Now, if this doesn't work and the number of carriers of sickle cell increase, this means that even the consumption of services, medical services in public hospitals, is more directed towards dealing with people who carry this disease simply because their parents decided to go ahead with a marriage. Now, in many countries in the world, and I know that this is not even a good suggestion, but in many countries in the world, the government is responsible after a certain number of children towards their education and medical health services, and then they tell you that you're responsible for the third child or the second child. In Bahrain, there is no such a thing.
No, in fact, we were thinking about introducing something to, well, I don't know if it's right to say it or not, because one of the opinions that came to our attention during this debate is, why don't we deprive
of the treatment so that people are more responsible towards the actions they take?
So
this is where I was going with it.
Exactly, and this has been voiced, this opinion has been voiced, which is, okay, they're going to get married, they decided after all the counseling and advice and all to go ahead with the marriage, okay, then you take your responsibility for your child when he's born or she is born with a disease, and the government has nothing to do with its medical treatment, the cost of medical treatment. This has been voiced, a voice, but not from the government, but from the group we've been debating the matter about. It has been controversial, and I think we opted against that.
You don't need really more issues now raised like that.
Yeah, I think it is the government's interest and wish is to treat every sick child in Bahrain. And okay, the parents maybe have been irresponsible in taking that step and getting married despite of the medical advice and the legal advice and all, but we should not really punish a child for the mistake of his parents.
That child should also grow to learn that this country, regardless of the mistakes of the parents, decided to give him and not deprive him of the health services and the facilities that he needed to live a normal life. Unfortunately, these are not the messages instigated in the minds of many children today.
We're trying to be tolerant, and we're trying to take all different views in deciding upon an important matter like this. And it's not easy sometimes to come to a good decision that pleases everyone. Sometimes we have to take harsh, strong decisions, and sometimes we just can just hold off and wait for the development of the society, the natural history of society in developing in its
evolution of the society.
To be more aware of the diseases, of what is dangerous, what is not right for it, and self-regulate and self-regulate with awareness.
Well, we're in 2013, going into 2014, and we're discussing hereditary blood diseases when the world is so advanced and they have overcome issues like that.
Some countries that have such a disease have taken stronger measures than what we did in Bahrain, but they don't have the influence of the Islamic Sharia law.
Of course, and
we have to admit that.
And we have to abide.
We need to balance our tradition, our religion, and the challenges we have as one of the diseases we are discussing today, sickle cell disease, and how to go about trying to prevent it and push the medical service to give the best of medical care to those patients and to see them as human beings, as suffering human beings, and be compassionate with them and show empathy with them and not label them as, some people sometimes unrightly say.
The issue is not the consumption of medical services, because the government provides medical services to everyone, and it is now education and health is something that we're proud of that in Bahrain. These are services for free. Where I also don't want to be misunderstood is that I'm not advocating for people not being treated as much as what I actually mean is people not to be seen suffering. I sometimes walk into clinics in the evening and I hear the pain of the person, and the doctor tells me this young man has sickle cell anemia, and his pain pains me.
Absolutely.
Health services is the right of everyone, but pain, when it can be avoided.
Absolutely, and that's what led us to come up with these different resolutions or drafts of laws to see if we can impact on the prevalence of the disease in the society. I think at some stage in the future we'll see less number of sickle cell disease in Bahrain. I'm sure that will happen. It's taking a slower path than we want, but it will happen one day. What we need to focus on nowadays is maybe improving the medical care that the healthcare providers are giving to the patients suffering from sickle cell disease, and that's our role over the next 6 months when we are debating with the government its plans and expecting them to open the first sickle cell disease medical center in Salmania. We were promised to see this opening in 2014, so hopefully we see that happening and its services being provided to the patients with sickle cell disease.
That's not a good sign, really, because in 2014 I would have loved to see that being closed down and not needing it, really.
Well, it's a wish, and let's deal with the reality.
Situation, of course.
The reality is that we have a good number of sickle cell diseases and we need to care for them.
Of course. Dr. Jamal, the upcoming elections, how do you believe the parliament is going to be shaped? I know that we're moving away from the topic of the diseases and the legislations, and I hope that this legislation will be issued, because many legislations that are directly related to people have not been issued, and there is some disappointment that many things haven't happened in the parliament, but things that touch people's lives directly like that, I hope the legislation will be passed very soon.
I have just a little saying here. People are focusing on a few demands. I understand that.
Yeah.
People want better houses, more salaries.
It's a basic right.
But unfortunately, these are the two issues we are judging the parliament upon. We're working most of the days of the week in different legislations that touch the lives of people.
Of course.
Medical, health
directly
care,
and indirectly.
education, employment, so many issues we are working on. So life is not just about more dinars in your pocket and a house, though they are very important.
It is about
issues.
the house.
It is very important. But we as legislators cannot just focus on one issue and forget lots of issues that deal with people's lives. Like, as I said, education, human rights, women's rights, children's rights, violence in the street. There's so many things. We've just finished from a meeting today about the new role of the ombudsman and how to deal with prisons and detainees, There are so many things our society is going through that we need to pay attention to. So it all depends whether you want to see the cup
half full or half empty.
Or half empty.
Yes.
But
yes.
I can say that this council has done a lot of legislative work comparing to the previous ones.
Plus, it all started 2010, by the way. It's a new experience.
We've done a lot of legislative work.
Yes.
From the constitutional amendments to ratifying lots of agreements, treaties, lots of legislations in different matters. So many, the child law, so many things.
But people focus on what they mostly need without realizing that these things affect the future generation.
And this will lead me to the 2014 elections, and I'd say, should the parliamentarian be judged on doing services for his neighborhood?
Yeah.
Looking for the affairs of the roads in the neighborhoods or the electricity, or on matters of national importance? I want to be judged on what I do in the field of legislation and also supervising the work of the government, rather than to focus on just minor little issues that can be done by the council representatives.
Of course, of course.
Municipality.
So, yes, because those are, the municipalities are responsible for everything that happens with the infrastructure of the area. It's not the member of parliament.
Exactly.
This is what people mix.
Exactly. Until now, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to be judged on what a municipality member
job is.
His job is.
Yeah.
I should be judged on my role as a parliamentarian.
A legislator.
Exactly. And unless people start differentiating between the two roles, the 2014 elections will just probably hold the same direction.
But Dr. Jamal,
people are being judged on what they achieved in doing the municipality work, not the legislative work.
But Dr. Jamal, our people are the same people who are so emotional and who, I will say that, who vote for the least competent, and I don't understand why. You know, as much as there are competent people in the parliament, with all my respect, there are people who are not competent, and this is not something I say, this is something that people say, yet they vote for them. So what do you expect from people who vote for incompetent people to think? How to think? Will they sit around an area and discuss, no, my MP's job is legislation, services, infrastructure, the road and these things is the municipal persons. People are too emotional, don't go into in-depth thinking.
Well, let me tell you, in different democracies, people have lobbies. They go into groups and they elect the members they want to represent their group, whether it is merchants, whether it's doctors, whether it is lawyers. So you get representation of the different groups in the parliament.
Of course.
Our society have to look into this, because when I came to the parliament myself and Dr. Sumaya, we were the only two doctors in the house, and we were just trying to see what we can do, you know, based on our previous experience in the healthcare, how to do laws, how to amend. I've been working on about 10 different medical related laws. We've submitted the law about the psychiatric health, and it has been approved, almost approved by the government. We've submitted the premarital amendments to the premarital test, medical test.
And it's been approved.
And other ones. We are doing the medical liability now. We are just revising it completely and revising it as well. So unless you get people who are specialized in different walks of life and different aspects of life, you cannot get a house that will live to the aspiration of people.
You have to represent everyone.
You have to.
Yes.
And it's not wrong that those people that are in the parliament trying to advocate the needs and the ambitions and the rights of certain groups.
Of course, because they represent, it's a house that represents everyone.
Okay, so if I am being elected through a big number of doctors to be their representative in the house and the council, so okay, why not I go for the rights of the doctors and try to amend medical laws and healthcare laws. And
because that has an impact on me, who's not a doctor. It has an impact on my children who are not doctors too.
Sure.
It's everyone.
So at the end, I think we need to sit as leaders in the society and see what we want out of the parliament.
Yeah.
What do we want from the parliament?
Yes.
I think we need to see specialized people coming and discussing all these matters and give their opinions, expert opinions, and that's the way the society can develop.
Of course.
And I hope some more specialists get into the 2014 elections and win it. What I see now, it's not very encouraging. It's in fact discouraging for any professional to join the parliament.
Yes.
Because they are being judged wrongly.
That's the people who vote.
Absolutely, but I hope that
unfortunately
they exercise better judgment.
Yes, I hope they will. As I said earlier, I'd like to first of all thank you, Dr. Jamal, for your time and this very fruitful discussion, Your Excellency, and I hope that this legislation will be passed. It will have an impact on many people, and it will literally lessen the pain of people. Literally do that. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. As I said earlier, and when I introduced my program, and that's how Dr. Jamal concluded it, people specialized in areas, but also people who have given back to society. You know, it's not about a degree that a person holds that enables or is a standard through which someone should walk into the parliament. It's what you have given back to society, even through charity and voluntary work. Some people are popular even with secondary level certificates. They are popular because they have dedicated years of their lives to the societies that they have lived in, the neighborhoods that they have lived in. People tend to mix between the role of the legislative authority and the municipal authority or the municipal services. People tend to talk and say, my MP did not fix the road that my house is opposite to, and these are issues that Bahrain needs to be more aware of, and I don't underestimate the awareness of our people. I just hope that the next elections more competent people will walk into the parliament, because that parliament actually represents us. Those 40 people represent the people of Bahrain, and the more incompetent people are there, the more the less of legislations that directly or indirectly touch our lives will be passed. On this episode of Open Talk, we shed light on sickle cell anemia and the legislations that are being attempted to be passed, that the legislative authority is attempting to pass, simply aimed at lessening the number of people who carry this disease. And let's not underestimate how important this is, because hereditary blood diseases, if not stopped, lead to fatalities. The figures Dr. Jamal shared with me, when I said 4 in a year, just a few years ago, I thought 4 was many, and the fatalities have reached more than 40 in 1 year at a certain time. And in a country where medical services are advanced, people also have a responsibility towards the future of their own children. With a legislation like that, slowing down the process, people going through counseling before going through a marriage that will end up with a child that will suffer for the rest of his life, a process that will slow down the marriage, a consent, a paper that you will sign and say, I'm responsible for the pain of my children. I believe that you should really think twice before even signing that paper and going into marriage court and deciding to go for it. It is your right, but the moment that right leads to the pain of others, you should think twice. On this episode of our program, my guest was Member of Parliament, His Excellency Dr. Jamal Saleh. Thank you very much for joining us. And welcome to another episode of your weekly program, Open Talk. On this episode of our discussion, I'd like to shed light on three issues interrelated to each other. The standard of people living in Bahrain, the issue of unemployment, the issue of raising families' income. But all these three are related to something in particular, and that is economic growth. On this episode of our program, we'd like to shed light on these issues and the role of the legislative authority, our parliament, in making these happen. My guest on this episode of our program is Member of Parliament, His Excellency Mr. Uthman Sharif. First of all, Mr. Uthman, I'd like to welcome you on our program, and Your Excellency, I hope that we will discuss, four crucial issues related to the legislative authority, but directly related to more than 500,000 of Bahraini population and 1.2 million of actual people in Bahrain.
Thank you very much for seeing me today in this episode. I do really fully agree that the major pillar for what you have mentioned is really the economic position and the economic growth within the country. As parliamentarian, and also we are more concerned about it because I'm a member in the Economic and Finance Committee. We are tackling a lot of various issues related to this, even though there are certain issues, but we take priorities. Priority is when come as legislators, we are trying to really achieve our objectives when we enter into a campaign as candidates. And when we came here, I believe that 90% of what we have really it was in our agenda at that time related to the unemployment, creating jobs, about upgrading the standard of living and also housing problems. These are you can't achieve even before without getting into really or trying to come up on the economic growth. Now, let me tell you that there are a lot of proposals being raised to the government or to the executive authority with regard to this issue, either directly from the parliament or indirectly through what is being raised or from the executive authority as to look into it. We come up at the end that it will add to what we have really proposed. Next step comes the implementation. Does the government has the enough budget, or whether it has been budgeted at certain year to achieve what we have proposed, to implement and become a reality? This is one issue. As you know that standard of living and the inflation and standard of living in Bahrain varies between 3.5 to 4%. And the increment in salaries and wages doesn't match as what the inflation is. But even though we find that Bahrain is the most maybe cheapest country in standard of living. If you go to any other neighboring countries or GCC, you can find out the difference. But still, there are a lot of demands. We know that the revenue in Bahrain is very limited, and the state budget shows a deficit. But we are very much depending upon the support of our neighboring countries through the scheme, the Marshall Scheme, which is coming up, which can part of our state budget, which was being allocated for projects, has been shifted to some other projects, as well as to increase more, to decrease the deficit, and also to come up with the achieved standard of living. I have two roles, two hats. I'm wearing two hats. You know that as a board member in Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and as a politician in Parliament. I can assure you that we are getting also certain inquiries from also the committees within the Parliament to the Chamber to give them their opinion with regard to some other issues related to the future of the economy in Bahrain and the impact of these resolutions and on the economy and the trade in general. And BCCI is very helpful, their legal department and most probably the board. They are very much concerned about these issues, because at last it will be indirectly, it will impact also other employees and business people. We are trying now also to make Bahrain a healthy environment for investors through legislation. Now legislations which is coming up either to amend or propose new ones.
Yes.
I can say that we achieved some progress in this regard. We amended a few legislations or decrees which has been raised from His Majesty the King, and at later stage it came as a decree, and that really came that it added a value to what we have now as an existing decrees. For example, now a foreign investor, we are trying to attract investment. You know, attracting investment means creating jobs.
Of course.
We have, even though our ratio of unemployment is low, which is around 4%, or if it's not a little bit more, but we are the lowest within the GCC countries because of the policy of the government and the ministry shows that through training, through allocating them and trying to find jobs in different and various either private or public sector. But we find that in Bahrain, investor when he finds that there are really some legislations which protect and secure their investment, they can believe that this is the best place to where to invest, and we can see that. I mean, government is very serious. Even there are a lot of rules and regulations protecting all private investments, and you can see that despite the financial crisis which hit all over the world in 2008, the impact on Bahrain, it was really below expectation.
Yes.
And this is one reason of why Bahrain is really an environment, a healthy environment available in Bahrain for the economy. As Parliament, we went through also a lot of reports and analysis being raised by the the International Bank or other organizations. We find that really what we are doing is really what it should be. So in this case, we had, like, for example, some decrees and some proposals being sent to us earlier with regard to the new commercial law. a new agencies law. These are new ones. And for commercial registration, if we amend this and review once every while to cope with and to match like the period or where we are standing now. For example, if I tell you today, is our commercial registration is matching what we are really is requirements today, I can say most probably, but it's not going to be matching for the coming next 5 years.
It has to be changed.
So it has to be changed and amended accordingly. So like that, we are trying now to look into it, not on the short run, in the long run, where we are standing. And does it match the 2030 vision or not? Because 2030 vision also is another issue.
Of course.
You have to cope with all this, and you have a target.
You're heading towards a different direction.
So you have to go to be within the track until you achieve the 2030 vision.
Of course.
So we are very much really concerned about this because we can find out that this is the roadmap. The 2030 vision is a roadmap for us to really go toward what we are going to achieve in 2030.
Something interesting that you brought up, Your Excellency, the issue of the Marshall Scheme. And if I haven't misunderstood, the scheme could help remove some of the burden on the government's budget and help us get over the deficits we have and direct that cash flow towards a direction that upgrades the standard of living of people. Is how I have explained it right? Do you see that in a very soon future? And with that scheme, where will this cash flow go to? To what services in particular? Is it too early to speak about this issue, or
no,
do you expect something?
It is not early to talk about or to speak about. It's not, the impact is not a direct impact. It is indirectly.
Okay.
Indirectly, it's going to be on. It will help to activate the economy of the country. Like for example, now if I say now our state budget shows a deficit of certain amount.
Okay.
Okay. So this means that the 375 million BD, which is $1 billion,
yes.
it's going to be injected in projects. Okay. So this means that this amount will be deducted from the total budgeted amount for projects.
Okay.
Okay. So automatically the deficit amount will reduce.
Yes. Yes.
Because if deficit is still there, where you are going to finance the deficit? Either from borrowing from local banks.
You don't need that.
So you don't need it.
Yes.
At last, the borrowing will stop, and you can reduce, because now the loan, I mean internationally, Bahrain, the loan which government has to pay, or is reaching 5 billion BD, which is too much, and this will affect the rating of the country of Bahrain. And also, if you want to borrow more, you have to pay more interest, because it depends upon the rating. So now the bank has certain criteria for borrowing. If you borrow more and your rating is, like for example, if it is AA or A, it's excellent, perfect.
Yeah.
But if you go to B or BB or BBB,
serious.
The interest rate even for the loan what you will be asking for will be higher. Because the risk is higher.
Yes.
So that is how they are allocating. But we are trying to, as much as we can, even when we discuss in Parliament the state budget or within the committee, to compromise. I mean, we don't want to of course, we try our utmost to get the Bahraini nations who are the local the best of what they ask for or demand to upgrade or to come up within for better standard of living, either by increasing their salaries or wages or giving them some increments in certain way. But I can assure you also to make better standard of living, you can do it indirectly through many issues, like by building more centers, like by getting more infrastructure, providing better facilities. These are also indirectly at add, and it will also be part of standard of living. We know that now His Majesty the King has mentioned this several times, that his concern is the Bahrainis, okay, and he is always would like to see them getting all the government services like housing, better living, providing jobs, and which is, he believes that this is the right. It is their right to have it, and it's been mentioned, and it's been an article in Constitution. We think that we are trying, and we are doing our utmost to achieve what we are
aiming at. Yeah.
Get it? I mean, but the executive authority also sometimes they cannot, implement or accept whatever comes from from legislators,
of course,
because sometimes either it is not being budgeted, okay, or they have to allocate an extra budget for it, which maybe it burdens maybe more to the country of the economy, it will burden any financial engagements to the country, which is more or less they have to look into it seriously.
And the country doesn't need more of that, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Now, wearing the hat of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where do you believe, Your Excellency, Bahrain should head towards when it comes to investment? There has been an increase in the number of hotels, and the increase has even shockingly occurred during the past 2 years, where the country had just gone through a crisis. The number of, I do see around, just by looking around, we see the number of hotels increasing. And if this says anything, it says that young people have more opportunities in the tourism industry, in the service areas in the tourism industry. But as Chamber of Commerce, where do you believe international investors will put their cash in the next decade to come? In what kind of projects? We've always been called the financial hub. Is it going to go more into the banking sector or other sectors?
No, I think Bahrain is a financial center. It is really, and it's been, and it's going to be the financial center because of so many things and so many privileges. I can say they are getting the most important issue is the telecommunication. And you can get the jobs for Bahrain, the local even. You can see that most of financial banks or institutes here in Bahrain, 90%, if not 95%, they are all locals and Bahrainis. So
They're well-paid jobs.
Well-paid jobs, and also they don't have to worry about. That's why this is one of the issues. The other issue is that, as I mentioned earlier, that all regulations is very conservative and secured. So that's why most of these banking sector they prefer to be in Bahrain rather than any other place. Where I can find that for the next or coming decade the investment should be, I believe that Bahrain, you know, that they depend on oil for their revenues. Okay,
it's a main source.
Which is a main source.
Yes.
And since a long time, and when we were discussing the state budget, we always recommend, and in our recommendations and reports, we say that Bahrain should also go to find another source of revenues. Like, for example, as you mentioned, tourism is a part. And industrial also is very important, which I think now the Ministry of Industry and Commerce is really working hard through Bahrain Park and also other free zone areas to attract. EDB is really doing a very good job also through their road shows in different areas to attract investment, and they achieved some good. If you see now in Bahrain International Park, you can find that there are some good number of companies have come and they invested in Bahrain, and that these companies also they recruited all Bahrainis locals, and they really created jobs for Bahrainis. You should know that we are here, Bahrain. We are very much, depending upon, let us say, our neighboring countries. For example, now Eastern Province in Saudi Arabia. Okay, the nearest place for the Eastern Province is Bahrain.
Of course.
Okay, so you can see that major retail outlets in Bahrain, especially in weekends or during holidays, is full of our neighboring, of our neighbors.
The main consumers, the main.
I can assure you that most outlets and retail outlets and all complexes and shopping centers, if you see, 70%, from 60 to 70%, are depending upon our neighboring countries.
GCC states, yes.
Okay, so I think also the causeway has really created a good movement of exchanging. On the other hand, also we have also some of our local also who goes to Saudi Arabia, but Bahrain has really benefited much more than Saudi Arabia in this issue. Also by transferring and exchanging goods within the causeway. This is also affected to reduce the cost of products.
So basically the consumer can get things at lower prices because
lower
of
prices, that. Yes. Consumer as well as business people who
traders.
Can traders to exchange. Even though we are having some issue, with regard to some clearing and delay, but this has been sorted out by authorities between two countries.
Finally, how do you believe, Your Excellency, the next Parliament will be shaped, in brief?
Well, I think the next Parliament, there will be some, it will come into a very different
form.
I think there will be some amendments and some changes within the constituencies. And I hope oppositions also would participate and come up, because their presence is really will add value. and we can see that during the first session was different than the second one.
Of course.
Okay, but now globally everything has been changed, and politically within the region and globally, that has really affected the whole policies of all countries.
Of course.
And I think the coming parliament session is completely different. Even the standard of thoughts between the public or locals themselves for to elect the candidates should be also matching the
requirements.
The requirements.
Of course. Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time, and the discussion was amazing here. While you look for amendments in legislations, I as a Bahraini look for amendments in the mindset of the voters.
Absolutely.
Amendments there is the most
I
important
do agree with
thing.
you, really.
Thank you very much. Well,
Thank you.
and I hope that these amendments in the mindset of the voters, they are the people who are going to shape the next parliament. They are the people who will decide. If the person who decides to represent them, and the people of Bahrain, by the way, it's not that candidate representing that neighborhood or that constituency. A candidate once walks into the parliament represents the whole of Bahrain. Competent people, votes should go for competent people. And without those votes going to the right place, we wouldn't be able to sit here and even predict where Bahrain could be in the next 10 years. They are the people who are shaping. These 40 members shape the future of the country through the legislations that they pass. On this episode of Open Talk, we shed light on a very important issue: how we link the status of the standard of people's living to economy. Many people say that, why don't I have a better income? And they do not link this to the issue of economic growth. Without economic growth, your life standards cannot be better. Do not underestimate the importance of holding an event that attracts hundreds and thousands of people from all around the world. There is a message through activities like that that are organized here. These people who come here go back home with messages about the country, about how advanced, modern, and civilized this country is. And investors are encouraged to put their cash into countries that open their doors to people through activities as simple as that. They get to see what the country has. So this leads to something else that, end of the day, enhances your standard of living. On this episode of our Open Talk, my guest was Member of Parliament, His Excellency Mr. Othman Sharif. Thank you very much for joining us.